Welcome everyone to the Asian Pacific Voices Radio, where you'll find stimulating conversations that explore diverse topics and stories impacting our communities. I'm your host, Sheena Yap Chan. Joining me today is our special guest, Isa Lay, a community activist and executive director of VAALA, a nonprofit organization whose mission is to connect and enrich communities through Vietnamese art and culture. Isa is also the co-founder of Viet Film Fest. Hello, Isa. Welcome to the show. How are you today?
Hi, Sheena. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me today.
Not a problem. Such an honor to have you here today. And Isa, tell us about your life growing up in the US. When did your family first move to the US? Were you born here or in Vietnam?
I was born in Saigon, in Vietnam, and we moved over here. We left Vietnam in 1983, and at first my family moved to France first, and we stayed there for 2 years, about 2 years, and then we moved over here in 1985. And so I started high school here. I went to 10th grade, sophomore, at Orange High School in Orange County, and I graduated from high school in 1988, and I went to Cal State Dominguez Hills for 2 years for pre-pharmacy studies. And then after that, I applied to pharmacy school and I got into USC Pharmacy School. And I graduated from USC Pharmacy School in 1994. After that, I started working as a pharmacist, and right now I'm working for Providence Home Infusion Pharmacy in Anaheim.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that. I know you mentioned that you're a pharmacist and you're also a radio host for Viet Nam California Radio in the late 90s to 2010. What inspired you to become a pharmacist and a radio host? Because that's not really typical and it's not really like professions that kind of like are together. There's no commonality to it. What inspired you to do both?
My dad actually co-founded the radio station called Viet Nam California Radio, VNCR, on 106.3 FM, and it's a Vietnamese language radio. And so I remember I visited my dad at his office, which is the radio station that was in Garden Grove at that time. And I remember there was like a news reading section in the morning, and the news announcer asked me to stay and just read a part of the news. And I remember I stayed and I read the news, and I was kind of nervous. But then after that, the news announcer gave me a note saying, "Could you stay and read the next section?" I'm like, "Wow, okay." So I started reading news at first for the radio station whenever I have time. Like if I have a days off and I have some days off during the week, I just come down to visit my dad and just stay and read the news and hang out at the radio station. And then at that time, the radio also has a program called the Arts Horizon, and to interview artists and to report news about art events in the community. So that time I start I like that program. So I remember I took over from the host who was busy at that time. She had to do something else, take care of something else, and I just took over. And then from there, I got to meet a lot of artists, and I went to report on a lot of artistic events in the community, like concerts, book signings, exhibitions, and then that's where I started to. Get myself into the art world.
Awesome. So did you have any like prior experience when you became a radio host or started doing hosting gigs for concerts and book signings and things like that? Or is it just something like you just jumped into it?
I think I just jumped into it, and I remember, yeah, at first when I started interviewing people, I was very nervous, and I'm like, oh my god, I have like list of questions in here, my list of questions, and I just started reading the questions off, and later on, I start feeling more comfortable, and I also love to listen to NPR and KPCC, and so is and meeting people just really excite me. I learned so much about I learned so much about art, and as well as the artist's journey is they always so interesting. And I also make a lot of friends by doing the radio show as well. And so I remember sometimes when I went to the restaurants, and sometimes people recognize me because I say something in Vietnamese, and they're like, "Oh, is that Isa from the radio station?" I'm like, "Wow, I can't believe that they recognize the voice." And it's just that because I see that we have a lot of activities in the community, and yet um, the art horizon was really like a one of the kinds of programs at that time to interview artists and to report on specifically on the art events in the community. And I also branched out to do art events from different states or different countries as well. Like I went to cover the Cannes Film Festival in 2004. Yeah, so that was a very very an unique and exciting experience. Yeah, unforgettable experience at
Yeah,
Cannes.
I love that because you just jumped into it, not knowing what was going to happen, right? But you were able to host different programs, meet new people, travel to different places, hear other people's stories, and that wouldn't have happened if you just didn't go out there and just start, right? Just jump in.
Yeah,
I know sometimes it's scary when we start something new and we don't have proper training, but the more you keep practicing, the more you progress and become a better host, become radio host, or become a better speaker. And that's what it is, just kind of just doing it, figuring things out along the way. So I really love that you were able to share that. And it just shows listeners, like, you just got to jump in there and see what happens, right? You'd be surprised at the opportunities that's in front of you. So I love that you mentioned that. Now, I know you served as VAALA's board as president from 2004 to 2008, and then as a executive director since 2008. Can you tell us, who founded the organization and who are the key members in it today? And for those of you who don't know what VAALA stands for, and I hope I said that right, it's the Vietnamese American Arts and Letters Association.
yeah. VAALA. VAALA is a nonprofit art organization, and it's a 501c3 organization. It was established in 1991 by a group of journalists and artists in the community to support the artists, because we are a new community. Vietnamese American community is relatively new in the U.S., so we have a lot of things that we want to support each other, including artistic events. Like people would publish books, people would do exhibitions, and actually my dad once again was a co-founder of this organization, along with he was a journalist, so he co-founded the organization along with other artists in the area. And um, and um, and he passed away in 1999 due to cancer. So I remember I told my mom that I would join the organization for a couple of years to volunteer. It was as a small tribute to my dad. And I told my mom that I would just join for a couple of years. And here I am. 20 years later, I'm still here. It's actually what I learned from the radio station, what the network that I brought from the radio station. I also used it for VAALA as well. For example, I started meeting filmmakers, and I found out that their journeys are so interesting, and how they want to bring the stories on the big screen, for example. And at that time, there were not a lot of Vietnamese American filmmakers. And we have Tony Bui, who did 3 seasons. We had Timothy Ling Bui, who did Green Dragon. That's pretty much it. And later on, we have Victor Vu, who did First Morning. And so it was that in the early 2000 that we only had a few feature films that got released. And so at that time I felt like there is a need of telling stories to the broader audience. But I didn't know that films had become such a important and universal platform. Especially nowadays when you have the advancement in the technology, you don't have to film a film by 35 millimeters and edit it in a long process. Right now, people can just do a short film or even a feature with your cell phone, right? So, but at that time, I didn't see any things related to films. That really carry out uh, for the public in the Vietnamese American community. So I thought it was important to bring the stories up by films as well as with different platforms. So I start using my networks with the radio station and call up the artists and ask them to participate in exhibitions, in film symposium, and things like that. Yeah. So that's how I started um, working with VAALA in those early days.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I know it's important to share our stories, right? Create representation, especially since, the Asian Pacific community is always lumped into one thing, right? We're seen as a monolith, not realizing it's such a diverse population, community, different cultures with different stories, with different traditions. And it's important to carry out those stories. Even though there's times when I'm sure it's challenging, especially, you do this all volunteer, right? And still work a full-time job, which I'm sure is it's a lot of work on your end, correct?
Well, it's quite interesting, like how I divide my time. I would work as a pharmacist during the day, and I work 4 days a week now, and so I have one day that I dedicate for meetings and other things that I need to take care of for VAALA, and we also work like uh, after hours. So a lot of board meetings, a lot of staff meetings will be after the regular hours or on the weekends. So a lot of working hours on the weekends too. Yeah, and then the events, of course, are usually on the weekends. So it's an interesting relationship between working as a healthcare provider and then later you work as a something in the arts. Totally, it's totally different. Yeah, but I can see that it's also complementary to each other because yeah.
Yeah, no, for sure. And especially if you love something, if you love, what you do, it's not really work, right? You're going out there creating difference, creating an impact. And at the same time, it helps your soul, right? Sometimes you need time away from your job, right? You just need some me time, or you just need, maybe it's your form of therapy, whatever that may look like, or whatever it is, leaving a legacy for your dad as well, or carrying on his legacy and impacting the community at the same time. When you're passionate about it, it's not really work. You're out there, making things happen. So I love that. And I know you're also the original co-founder of Viet Film Fest. You received several awards for your art activism, including the inaugural VMO Luminary Champion Award for your contribution in cultivating positive advancements for Vietnamese filmmaking. Have you had great interest in filmmaking or watching films growing up? Why did you feel that was important to create this festival? I'd love to hear a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I think I talked a little bit about it earlier, and I think that no, I'm just a regular audience member who would go to movie theaters like once in a while. I'm not a film buff or anything. But now I start watching all of Vietnamese films, right? But so in 2002, after an exhibition that we did for VAALA, we were talking about doing something in films, and I remember that I don't know why we have like literature, we had exhibitions, we had fine art, we had plays, concerts, but we didn't have anything related to films. So at that time, Jim, another board members, and I were talking about how we could uh, do something to get people motivated and see if there's new that we could bring to the community. And at that time, I thought of doing a cinema symposium at UCLA because I didn't know a lot of people in films working in the film industry. So I started looking up and invited a few filmmakers and actors and producers to come to a symposium at UCLA, and it turned out to be a success. I remember we had 9 guest speakers, and the students was so excited, and they keep asking us like, what else we're gonna have, and so Jem and I decided that we will put together a film festival for VAALA, and it's called the at first it was called Vietnamese International Film Festival, and later on we changed the name to Viet Film Fest, which is easier to shorten, and so we at first we didn't have enough films, so it was every other year, and then it took place at UC Irvine, and then later on we had enough films, and the industry is more advanced, and the technology just helped everything advance, and so we have more films, and now we turn the film festival into every year starting in 2014. Yeah, so we moved the film festival from UC Irvine to AMC at the Block, which is the in Orange, and then we brought it to Frida Cinema, and last year we had it at Cinemark in Huntington Beach at Balaterra. But this year in 2023, we will bring it back to hopefully to probably to Frida Theater in Santa Ana. So it is really we found out that films is such a universal language, and we can present it to different ethnicities, different generations can enjoy the film, and it's affordable. Like unlike a piece of fine art, you know, people can afford a movie ticket easier, and it's accessible to the audience, and so we um, and I love how to see how the audience interact with the filmmakers after the screening, and that's set it apart from the regular movies screenings that you just go to, like on the weekends you go to AMC or Cinemark for a movie. But if you go to the film festival, it's different because you get to meet the people behind the scene. You get to meet the directors, you get to meet the actors, and a lot of times people would fly from out of state or even out of the countries to come and present the films and to meet with the audience and to meet with other professionals. And I think that's the important part that we want to maintain with the film festival. Yeah.
That's such an amazing story. And I love that, you were like, there was nothing out there that showcased, Vietnamese films, right? You found a need and just filled it, right? You said, if no one else is doing it, I'm just going to start it. Even though I'm not sure how to start it, I'm just going to start it, right? And
Exactly. I have to say that we we owe it to a lot of our friends out there, like the Visual Communications, which runs the Los Angeles Asian Pacific Film Festival. I remember Jim when I went to Visual Communications and talked to the directors there and asked them how to put on a film festival, and they sat down and went through how to do it, from the call for entries to the curatorial process. And we just went to a lot of film festivals to see how the film festival is run. Like for example, we went to Sundance. It was cold, but it was so beautiful. We went to the San Francisco Asian American Film Festival. We went to Los Angeles Asian Pacific Film Festival, San Diego Asian Film Festival. And yeah, it's such a wonderful network out there that people were very, very supportive. And we also, when we did the call for entries, it was actually tough for us to get the word out there. It's because the Vietnamese communities are very scattering around, and so a lot of places we don't have the media to get to them. So thank goodness that we have social media now, so we can get the word out there easier. But the back in the days, we we had to go through like word of mouth, and especially if we have like a big communities in France or in Australia and Canada, we have some Vietnamese media there, but not a lot, so we still have to rely on word of mouth a lot. And so that's one of the challenges that we had in the past, but right now we still have um, it's a big challenge to get the word out there to countries like in Europe or to in Australia, to get the work submitted by the Vietnamese filmmakers from those countries.
Yeah, I love that. And I know you mentioned that you're going to have the Viet Film Festival again this year. What other upcoming projects do you have for 2023?
We thinking of we really want to bring back the Youth in Motion filmmaking workshop. Youth in Motion filmmaking workshop is a workshop for a free filmmaking workshop that teach the youth how to um, edit films, how to make a short film, how to write a short script, and it was a very successful program, but we had to put it on hold because of the pandemic in 2020. And so in 2021, we couldn't bring it back yet because at that time there was an outbreak and the kids were still taking lessons online, and last year we couldn't bring it back. So this year we really want to bring it back because it's I think that we have a need to the youth, actually the youngsters, they have the need to express themselves, and films is such a great medium to for them to express themselves, because now they so savvy with the new technology, and they can do that with their phones even. So I think that we really want to bring it back, and hopefully it could happen in the summer, and maybe we can showcase the films at the upcoming Viet Film Fest in the fall, which will take place from September 30th through October 15th. One of the weekends will be in person, but the rest of the time will be virtual. And um, and so we want to bring that back, the filmmaking workshop for the youth. And we'd like to launch a series of book signings to introduce the new authors, the new uh, yeah, writers to the communities. And we'd like to collaborate with a couple of public libraries for this program. So I'm excited to present the new writers also. Yeah.
Awesome. I can't wait to see that. Excited for all the youth who's going to be into filmmaking. You never know. You might end up, having someone who's going to be nominated for an Oscar or Golden Globe. Anything's truly possible, right? And it would be
Yeah.
all because you had a program that allows kids to let their imagination run wild, right? And just create something, whatever that something may be. So, super excited for that. And, a lot of our listeners are so, inspired by your story, everything that you've done to elevate your community. Is there any tips or words of wisdom that you'd want to leave for them, especially in the beginning of the year? Not everyone has a great start of the year, but they can always change their path at any given moment. What would be some tips or some advice you'd want to give to our listeners?
I don't really have any advice, but I really like the saying, life gives you lemons, you make lemonade. Yeah, I like that saying a lot, because I think that I I cherish whatever I have, and I think I will find people who have the same mind and who would like to also um, elevate everyone else around them, motivate everyone else, or by their own stories, or sharing stories, or sharing their experience. And I think that is 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 at first, when we first started something, we probably don't know where it will lead you, where it will lead me to, but eventually it will come. And I believe that if we build something, like for the future generations, if we build it, they will come. So it's the same, and I think that I would like to provide that to the future generations as well.
I love that. That's great advice. And sometimes we just are so afraid to go out there and create something because we fear the worst of everything, especially growing up in an Asian culture. But here's a great example of, you started, reading something for your dad's radio, and you became a radio host. You got to do so many different things. You decided to be part of VAALA, and look what you're doing. You realized you needed, more films that showcase Vietnamese Americans, and then you started the film festival. You had no clue what you were doing or where it was going to go, but you were excited, right? And passionate, and you just made it happen. If you didn't know something, you asked around, right? And all that takes confidence to do, because it's not always easy as well, right?
Yeah.
Especially as an Asian woman, we're taught to just be in the background and not really go out there and do anything. But, I'm so grateful that you're able to create this amazing, these amazing programs for the youth, be able to showcase so much Asian talent, Vietnamese American talent, and you're just continuing to do that and still work a full-time job, which is like, how do you do everything? So
With a
I'm
lot of people, along with a
yeah,
lot of people. Yeah, I wouldn't be able to do it by myself.
I love that you mentioned that, because, working together is what creates the change, right? We don't have to do everything
Mhm.
ourselves. It's okay to ask for help. So I love that you mentioned it as a team effort. So yeah, thank you so much. And Isa, is there any websites or social media links where our listeners can learn more about the Viet Film Festival, about VAALA, and the programs that you have?
Yeah, our website is VAALA.org, VAALA.org, and also the Viet Film Fest is vietfilmfest.com. And we are also on Twitter, Instagram with VAALA Community. Yeah, so yeah, check us out and follow us, and we will see you at our programs.
Love it. So make sure to hit the follow button on all their social media. And I just want to thank our guest, Isa Lei, for joining me on today's show. To learn more about VAALA, please visit their website at vaala.org. We would love to also hear from you, our valued listeners, about any suggestions for future guests or topics. Also, be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform, as well as follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube channel. Asian Pacific Voices Radio is produced by Asian Culture and Media Alliance, a nonprofit that empowers our Asian and Pacific Islander communities with a voice through media arts. If you would like to support our program, please visit AsianPacificVoicesRadio.com. I'm Sheena Yap Chan, and thank you for listening. Please join us next week for another exciting and thought-provoking Asian Pacific Voices radio show. Take care until then, everyone.